In your words, you wield the weapons that can save us or sell us out. I don't need to remind you the reality of vulnerable communities. If you're here today, you know what climate change is doing to us. You don't need my pain or my tears to know that we're in a crisis.
This was Brianna Fruin, one of the many youth activists who have been calling on world leaders to act urgently to solve the climate crisis. Hello and welcome everyone to this wrap-up of the first week at COP26, the climate meeting taking place in Glasgow. I am May Yaqub, your host from the United Nations in New York, and I will be taking you on this journey to the city in Scotland where thousands have gathered to meet my colleagues Laura Quinyenos and Connor Lennon. They are in the thick of it all, covering the events of what is properly known as, okay, it's a mouthful, the 26th Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or COP26. So the delegates, experts and activists have a weighty task: how to secure commitment to ensure global net zero by mid-century and keep the target of global temperature rise within 1.5 degrees. Equally important is how to adapt to protect communities and natural habitats, mobilize finance, and work together to deliver these goals. All of these intense discussions are taking place in the blue zone and the green zone of the magnificent Scottish event campus. With me from the blue zone is my colleague Laura. Laura, first question that comes to mind: why is there a blue zone and a green zone? And do you have a rollerblades to get you around? Give us the flavor of the space.
Thank you, May, and greetings from the Blue Zone at the Scottish Events Campus in Glasgow. Well, to answer your question, the Green Zone, which is at the Glasgow Science Centre, is a couple of miles from here and is the place where the COP26 hosts are highlighting their own solutions. In this case, the United Kingdom, of course. So they have a place where the community can go and they don't need to go through extensive security checks or get a badge like we have to do here at the Blue Zone. And of course, they can enjoy and participate like all of us. And here, the Blue Zone, is where all the key negotiations are happening, where the presidents were walking around earlier this week, and where there's a lot of security. But as you can see, we're in the action zone, and here there's a lot of events happening every day. They have 2 different pavilions here, and they have a huge a place, what you'll see with Connor later on, where they're also doing events.
Laura, if I may take you back to the first day we saw activists in the street. They held their own opening ceremony in the city center on Saturday, October the 13th, marching to mark the beginning of a non-violent direct action planned during the conference. What can you tell us about this peaceful protest?
Yes, May. Well, this was the first of the protests that Extinction Rebellion have been doing during the past week here in Glasgow. They are a movement that uses civil disobedience, non-violent, of course, to demand action for climate change and also to prevent our own extinction, hence their name. They have a lot of events planned in Glasgow for these 2 weeks of COP26, and they're not alone. They're joined by many artists. They're also joined by other organizations of young people, such as Fridays for Future, the Greta Thunberg movement. Many other protests have occurred this week here in Glasgow. Of course, Extinction Rebellion are not the only ones. And right now, there is a huge protest happening in the city of Glasgow today. It might be the biggest one we see in these 2 weeks. So, of course, we'll be telling you more about this on our website and our daily newsletter. So keep an eye on that.
Another big event that took place this week was the pivotal pledge to save and restore our forests. We saw developed countries contributing to this pledge, such as the US, and also private sector leaders, among them Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Can you tell us in brief what are the commitments made at this event?
Well, the big commitment was announced by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. 110 countries representing 85% of the planet's forests signed the so-called COP26 Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forest and Land Use. They commit to halt and reverse deforestation by 2030. Another big commitment was made by 28 countries, which represent 75% of global trade in key products that threaten forests, such as palm oil and cocoa. And they committed to certain actions to deliver sustainable trade. The UK Prime Minister called it guilt-free chocolate, noting that this new roadmap of action is a new partnership between governments and major producers and consumer countries to break the link between deforestation and agricultural commodities. The COP26 hosts also presented the Congo Basin Pledge, which has been signed by 10 countries, and the Bezos Earth Fund, as you mentioned, and the European Union to mobilize $1.5 billion to protect forests, peatlands, and other critical carbon stores in this region. And as you mentioned, Jeff Bezos, through this Bezos Earth Fund, vouched $2 billion for efforts to halt deforestation and restore forests, additional to $1 billion that was already promised back in September. Countries like the United States and Colombia also presented national commitments as well.
Thanks very much, Laura. Moving on to my colleague Connor, who is in another part of this huge conference site. Connor, where are you exactly?
Hi, May. Yes, in this huge concourse, the biggest they've ever had at a COP, I'm told. And this is the Pavilions section. And there are dozens of pavilions, which are some one story, some have two stories, from countries, organizations, multilateral organizations, you name it. They're all here. And many of them have their own events. And you'll see chairs set up with cameras being broadcast around the world. Some of them are hybrids, some of them, which means that some people are coming from other parts of the world. This is part of the COVID-19 pandemic protocols that we're all still dealing with. We're masked up most of the time, and we have many checks. We have to have a test every day as well, just to get into this zone. Rachel Kite, who you may know, who was the former Secretary General's Special Representative for Sustainable Energy, she tweeted something a bit mischievous the other day. She said that the countries with the largest pavilions are the ones that have made the smallest commitments. Make of that what you will. I couldn't possibly comment.
Connor, tell our viewers a little about the conversation you've had that helped you understand what needs to happen and how some of that change has already begun.
Well, I think one of the great things about being here is that there are so many interesting, passionate and knowledgeable people to meet from all over the world, from throughout the UN, many colleagues we don't get a chance to meet that often, and heads of state, ministers and activists. And I've been really struck, I think, by the positivity that I've come across over the last few days. We came across plenty of cynicism in the weeks leading up to this event, but once you're here, you really feel that there's that energy, the sense that we can actually really make a go of this and make something of it. Of course, these are early days. We're only into week one of this event. There's still another week to go and plenty of difficult conversations to be had. And I think I also have to mention the anger that there is from many people outside this event. There have been protests pretty much every day, and those protests are building. And we're expecting this weekend to have the biggest of the lot, activists coming from around the world to make themselves heard.
Connor, in the Green Zone, our UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres met with young climate activists such as Greta Thunberg from Sweden, Metsi Jonel Tan from Philippines, Vanessa Nekate from Uganda, and many others. What kind of influence are young people having on such a serious matter?
Yes, as you say, the Secretary General met Greta Thunberg and other young activists. Greta, as you know, doesn't mince her words. She was very forthright in some of her tweeting. I'll let you take a look at Twitter. I won't repeat it here. And that anger has been spilling over into the streets as well. As I said, we will be talking more about that next week. Many of these young people are demanding to have more of a say in these negotiations. The UN, for some time now, has been moving in that direction. We have a youth envoy, of course, and we've had many meetings where we try to bring young people into that conversation to make sure that they have a seat at the table. And that's what they want here as well.
Connor, this week you and Laura were following the money, talking about the millions, billions, and yes, trillions that are being pledged for climate financing. So did we see any breakthrough moments?
It's hard to say. I'm sorry to hedge around this, May, but lots of figures have been bandied around, from hundreds of billions to hundreds of trillions. But what does that all mean, and how is it going to translate into real action on the ground? Like I said, we're only halfway through. It's still a week to go. It's looking good in terms of the commitments, but will it really translate into action? We'll just have to wait and see.
Thank you so much, Connor. Wish you and Laura all the best in the second week of COP26. Hoping you don't stay awake right through. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it for today. Until we meet again, be well, stay safe, and keep pressing for your rights to a sustainable, greener world.